was to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and they had read Barometer Rising. And I was fascinated to walk in a place that I had read about in a book. And it was just like, I know that sounds kind of simplistic now, but I'm from a pretty small town until it's And Alison lived in St. John's, which is, I don't know, for whatever reason, makes me like her all the more. And Nate's from Austin, Texas, and we're going to go out on January 27th. But it is one of my favorite places to go in all of the US. I look forward to reading your book too, because I've been to the park a few times, and it's one of the great sort of blessings of being in a band for a living is you get to travel to all these places. So how about a round of applause for all three of the other people? My book is called The Newfoundlander in Canada, which is really about my first trip across the country. And for those, I got to do that, really out the window of a band van. And as I say, I always tell the story of how, just for context or whatever, my first trips on the country were in a band, and I'm from a little fishing town, about 500 people, and my uncles and my father were all, amateur, semi-professional musicians, but no one did it for a living. And I always tell the story of my grandmother, a couple of years after Great Big Sea got rolling and we were doing gigs all across the country. And my grandmother would say, she would have been in her 90s then, she said, "Alan, honey, yeah, you still playing in the band?" I was like, "Yep, still playing in the band now." "Not working?" Nope. So, growing up in a little fishing town on the coast of Newfoundland, and I was very close to St. John's, but still very isolated because we didn't have a car. And so St. John's might as well have been Malta. It was just like, it was a hard enough thing to imagine getting to move to the big city of St. John's, let alone get to the rest of the Canada, the rest of the world, or whatever. And I just thought it might be an interesting thing for people to hear what Canada looked like to a fella in his early 20s from a little fishing town in Newfoundland who'd never been anywhere and had nothing really to compare it to except St. John's and Eddy Harbor. That's it. That's really the only two places I knew. And so, and I thought in particular that it would be an interesting lens because it comes, for three reasons, and I was trying to get them all right. First of all, I'm from, the country might have looked unique to me because I'm from the very edge of it, right? You literally can't go any further that way, and you run out of, that's it. Geographically, it's an extremely remote place, and it's more remote than even I thought. And I thought about trying to figure out a way in the book that I could explain to people how difficult it is to be a band or a musician or a touring musician from Newfoundland. And I say, well, the example I came up with was okay, if one of the things that bands need is easy access to other cities, So say another city of, say 30,000 people, right? So you take any town in southern Ontario, I don't know, pick Kingston or something, and draw a 5-hour circle around Kingston, right? And how many towns of 30,000 people do you pass? Do you have access to? A few, quite a few, Drop that 5-hour circle around St. John's, Newfoundland. I can save you the trouble, the answer is none. Right? And then I go, okay, double it. Right? How many people does someone from the band from Kingston have access to in 10 hours, in any direction? Millions, tens of millions, right? Sure. Do the 10-hour circle around St. John's. I'll save you the math, the answer is still none. I'll tell you what, add another 5 hours. Still none. And so, St. John's is a unique place to look at the country of Canada, and just as a geographical thing. And then the second kind of reason I thought it might be unique is that, in the weirdest twist of history and fate, I'm a first generation Canadian. And that surprises people as well. It's like, they say, what do you mean? Right now, it's like, yeah, I am now. But did your parents move from somewhere? Nope. You're like, well, how are you a first generation Canadian? It's like, my parents weren't born in Canada. They weren't. My mom and dad were born in Newfoundland, you know, in the early 40s. And I always say, like, you know, it's the weirdest thing, but my mom and dad were born in the 40s in the fishing town in Newfoundland. I was born in that same fishing town around 20 years later, but we're from different countries. And my grandparents, 2 generations ago, would have been adults when the vote came to choose to stay an independent, you know, republic or nation in Newfoundland, or to join Canada. And I don't need to wonder how my grandfather would have voted, because he told me a lot, often, as did many people his generation around Eddy Harbor where I grew up in. I guarantee that they did not vote to give away their country. You know, so here I was, born into this little fishing town, and apparently I was from Canada. Said so, and I watched Tommy Hunter and Hockey in Canada, and it seemed like a nice crowd to me. My parents, you know, became Canadians as children, and you know, in the economic hard times that we had when I was a kid, they didn't spend much time dwelling on the topic of nationhood or not, or something. That we're too busy trying to keep crazy people like me fed. And so we're really the first generation of Canadians born into our family, but also the first ones that ever thought about it. And like that, so nobody in my family knew anything about Canada at all. Like it was like I just in retrospect, it was like the Portuguese white fleet used to park every summer outside Eddy Harbor. I met lots of people from Portugal. I never met anyone from Calgary, ever. How would I? Like, you know, like, and then I never met, you know, it's just like, when I watched Tommy Hunter, and I loved it because people were singing songs and that, I thought that was awesome, but I sounded way more like the Clancy brothers from Ireland. Like, it didn't sound like me at all, that sounded like me. You know, and so, Canada was this thing, this mysterious place that apparently I was a part of, but I had no clue about, you know, and I was do this thing. I was asked in grade 2, I think it was grade 2, might have been grade 1, the teacher gave us a map of Canada, like with no, you know, with no provinces outlined or anything like that, and they said, write down everything in there that you know about Canada. And as you see, there's quite a bit of information over on this side. But you know, I talk about like St. John's and town. Newfoundland is divided exactly into 2 halves, town and around the bay. And I knew a little bit about North Sydney, and because that's where the ferry went, I heard. I knew that this part over here was where the Montreal Canadiens played. And I knew that they often played a city where the Maple Leafs played, and I couldn't remember how to spell it. So I spelled it on my map the way that the fishermen would say it on the wharf in Eddy Harbor. So it's spelled CHRONTO. 2 syllables, Toronto. And I knew Vancouver, British Columbia was the one out west. And I knew it had Rocky Mountains next to it, and that's all I knew. But there was these 2 big spaces left, and I heard the fishermen on the wharf talk about it. The fish were bad, they might have to go out west or up north to go find work. And so that's the other 2. It's up north, and you know, and it wasn't a whole lot better when the band's there. Then the third thing that I thought makes the sort of lens on the country of Canada unique is that, of course, when I finally did get a chance to discover, you know, this great country, I discovered it out the window of a band van, right? And which is like, you know, one of the most wonderful ways to see anything is to get to go into a concert there. But also, like, what a crazy introduction to the country, you know, to, you know, get in a van effectively in Eddy Harbor or a rented station wagon and drive it to Victoria about 9 times on about $300 a week. And and all the foolishness that ensues, and these poor decisions, and like poor choices, and barely surviving this, that, and the other thing. But I think, you know, if you write the book and you get a chance to check it out, it's a unique introduction to something that I think you'll all find very familiar, you know, and that's that Canada's a beautiful and a warm and an open and accepting place for people from every race and every creed, and including Newfoundlanders. And so, that must, I don't know, it must be around 15 minutes, is it? So thank you very much for having me today. For the day, I suppose. Well, how about a round of applause for everybody? A song. I'm not sure what could we sing. How about you know, Newfoundland folk song? Love it. I'll tell you what I'll sing. I'll sing one of my favorite sort of Newfoundland folk songs. This one was written in my lifetime, but it's firmly entrenched into the Newfoundland folk canon. I dearly love it. I want to sing it. It goes. I'll sing it now. One second, how's the first verse go? It's going to be awesome, don't worry. It goes like this. Oh, my name's Abel Rogers, the shareman am I, on a three-masted schooner from Twillingate Isle. I've been the world over, north, south, east, and west, but the middle of nowhere's where I likes it best, where it's wave over wave, sea over bow. I'm as happy a man as the sea will allow. There's no other life for a sailor like me, but to sail the salt sea, boys, sail the sea. There's no other life but to sail the salt sea. We sing it together already. Next time she comes right down. Oh, I leave my wife lonely 10 months of the year, for she built me a home and raised my children dear. She'd never come out to bid farewell to me, or ken why a sailor must sail the salt sea, where it's wave over wave, sea over bow. I'm as happy a man as the sea will allow. There's no other life for a sailor like me, but to sail the salt sea, boys, sail the sea. There's no other life but to sail the salt sea. And well, the work, it is hard and the hours are long, but my spirit is willing and my back it is strong. And when the work's over, the whiskey will pour. We'll dance with the girls upon some foreign shore, where it's wave over wave, mother, sea over bow. I'm as happy a man as the sea will allow. There's no other life for a sailor like me, but to sail the salt sea, boys, sail the sea. There's no other life but to sail the salt sea. And I've sailed the world over for decades or more, and oftentimes I wonder what I do it for. I don't know the answer, it's pleasure and pain, but with life to live over, I do it again. Where it's wave over wave, all together. I'm as happy a man as the sea will allow. There's no other life for a sailor like me, but to sail the salt sea, boys, sail the sea. Well done yourselves. But to sail the salt sea, boys, sail the sea. There's no other life but to sail the salt sea.